Welcome, folks. We're just getting ready. We're gathering, and we're just waiting for a few more participants to join us before we get started. But just wanted to take a minute to welcome you to our Boston COVID-19 janitorial and security best practices. We're going to get started in just a little bit. Thanks for coming. Just want to say good morning to everyone. It's just about 10 o'clock. We're waiting for just a few more people to join in here, but want to welcome our friends in Boston as we continue to just take a few more minutes to let more of the participants join our meeting today. Okay, so we're just waiting just another moment or so and we'll get started. Happy to be with you virtually, Boston. Excited for today's presentation. We plan to go about 30 minutes or so. And our virtual meeting and town hall today is driven by you. So if you are in the audience now, and while we just wait to get started in a few minutes, you may notice down at the bottom, there is a Q&A button, and that is how you will be able to ask the panelists today questions. So we will have a quick introduction. Mike Miller is present with us today. He is representing Boston and you in Boston, and he will be talking to you today about some of our janitorial practices that we put in place, the best practices for COVID-19. And I will be here on hand today and answering any of your questions regarding security and front desk. And then we have a special guest with us, Juan Jose Chavez, who's part of our operations team, who can get into detail about any of your janitorial, any of the questions you may have regarding janitorial. So very excited to be presenting to you Boston today. And I think with that said, we are just about 3 minutes past the hour, and it looks like we can get started. So I just want to welcome everyone once again. I want to talk to you a little bit about how we got started doing these town halls. Primarily, what we every Thursday plan does a large town hall to the audience across all of our markets, and we've had huge turnouts for those Thursday town halls. And you know, it's a little more generic and a little less specific to the markets that we service. So we thought it would be great to be able to help specifically in some of our local markets. And today we're very excited to be featuring you, Boston, with Mike Miller, your representative. So with that said, Vinny, if you'll advance the slide, I'm going to turn it over. First, quickly about myself. If you don't know me, I'm Dino Giuliano. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Planned Companies. I've been with the company for 17 years now. I oversee all the markets when it comes to sales and marketing. And now I'll turn it over to our Boston expert. Mike, you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I appreciate you guys tuning in today and taking a little time out of your day. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Miller. I'm the Director of Business Development for Planned Companies in the Connecticut, Westchester, New York, and obviously what we're talking about today, the Boston, Massachusetts region for Planned Companies. So Vinny, if you could advance the slide, please. All right, so today we wanted to talk about a few topics. This presentation is really driven by you guys and by the Q&A that we're going to be doing at the end. But during the presentation, if you guys wanted to hop in at any point and ask any questions related to janitorial or even security, please hop in, put your questions in at the bottom at any point, and we'll kind of address them as we go through our short presentation for you guys here today. Next slide, please. Yeah, so kind of just wanted to get started here this morning and kind of just briefly touch on kind of the impact that the COVID-19 has had on the Boston landscape compared to kind of the rest of the country. And as we go through this, these unprecedented times with this virus that kind of started to land here in the United States back in January. And just a few points we wanted to point out. I mean, unemployment claims in Boston now have reached about 722,000 versus, about 30 million claims throughout the United States. Boston, as of yesterday, has about 13,000 cases of the virus compared to 1.1 million in the United States now currently. And, due to this, tragic virus that is, something that we've really never seen before. We've had about 3.5 thousand Bostonians have lost their life, and just really tragic. So we kind of just wanted to kind of highlight some of the landscape that's been going on in the market, and we're all in this together. And somebody has known somebody that kind of has tragically lost their lives due to the virus. Vinny, can you go to the next slide, please? So kind of to continue with, kind of the landscape before we kind of get into updates on janitorial, and just kind of wanted to give a rundown pretty briefly on, as of February 1st, we had our first confirmed case in Boston. And, as of the last couple of weeks, it's kind of exploded with, the different markets and kind of where they are on the curve. So, just a couple dates to point out. As of March 17th, the city has suspended regular activity on construction sites in Boston. So it's kind of construction on new properties kind of just hit a halt. And, we're kind of looking, kind of looks like we're going to be getting back to some sort of normalcy in the next, couple of weeks, and kind of getting those projects back, to really get the economically and the normalcy moving back in Boston. And hopefully it'll be sooner than later. Just a couple other things to point out. I mean, they kind of did as in all markets throughout the United States, they put in the social distancing back in the beginning of April 6th, and that was through the month of May 4th. Most people know that it's now been extended to the 18th. So, we're kind of inching closer to that date, and, hopefully they're rolling out different phases in the market to really kind of lay out a plan for the Boston area, the Massachusetts area, and really all markets throughout the United States to really kind of get things moving in a more positive direction, obviously keeping in effect the social distancing guidelines that the CDC has kind of set up for moving through this kind of virus that really things have been changing daily. So it's kind of, we got to kind of stay up on the CDC guidelines and kind of, take the information as it comes almost on a daily basis now. One of the positive things that the Mayor Walsh kind of put in was the launch of the Good Neighbor. It's a free platform that connects, older people, at-risk individuals with volunteers to kind of, get the basic necessities that they need. I mean, a lot of people have been trying to, get out to the grocery store, and they're kind of missing out on some of the things that they need for their daily lives. So they kind of put in this initiative to kind of help alleviate sending some of those at-risk individuals into, the more highly congested areas. So it's a great initiative, and, they're just trying to help out where they can. As of last Friday, they are still extending the casinos, the hotel industry. They're kind of following suit with the social distancing that is now as of May 18th. So we're kind of getting to that point. We're a few weeks away from, hopefully some stuff that starts to open back up in the market. And, the governor, as well as the mayor, has been part of the 7-state coalition to kind of develop a plan and kind of move forward with getting things back up and running, and really trying to get things back to normalcy, and hopefully, people can get back to their daily lives and get back to businesses opening, so we can knock down that unemployment rate that's kind of skyrocketing, not just in Boston, but in all of the markets throughout the United States. Next slide, please. So to kind of get into some of the adjustments that, on the janitorial front that we're making during the COVID-19 landscape. One of the things, whether it be if you have your janitorial staff in-house or outsourcing to a vendor like planned, you really need to have an open channel of communication with your janitorial team, whether that be a 5-10 minute conversation, on a daily basis to kind of go over a checklist of kind of what's happening on site, where are the high frequency areas, and kind of really putting together a plan to kind of make sure that your residents normally are, going about their daily lives, they're out at work. Everyone's home now, so you really you have more high volume areas throughout the property. So you really want to kind of, put together a team, make sure you guys are having an open line of communication so that you're kind of, once some people are starting to contract the virus, you kind of just want to know and kind of all be on the same page so that you can kind of move through this pandemic on a, as a team, and kind of, like I said before, everyone's in this together, so we need to have an open line of communication throughout the property. There basically should be try to have one point of contact for the building, being the liaison between, management board, the janitorial team. We are all in this together, so janitorial team is going to make observations throughout their day, and as they move through the building and kind of hit all of their scopes of work for the building, you kind of just want to have that the point of contact that can kind of relay any messages back to management, the board, on stuff they've seen throughout the day, to kind of formulate a plan to kind of get through this, so that you're making sure that the safety of your residents is at an all-time high during this pandemic, as we kind of, things change on a daily basis on site. Schedule check-ins to cover staffing updates, challenges, different inventory control that you have on site. Things are going to change on a daily basis, whether, inventory is getting low because we are using, some of the supplies on a more frequency basis. As we get more cases, on site, hopefully the amount of COVID-19 cases on site is deteriorating. But we really just need to, make sure we're checking on updates, and, make sure that the staff on site is kind of all in this together, and kind of, as in different markets, there are different challenges, and, some of the associates take mass transit to get to work. You really just need to make sure that we're all communicating, so that we're making sure that everyone is, the staff's able to get to the site, and make sure that we have the, the proper inventory, and, making sure that the amenity spaces are locked down so that people aren't going in there, and the places that have been disaffected now are being in more infected areas throughout the site. Janitorial services, if your janitorial services are contracted out, you want to put together a plan with your vendor. You want to be updating cleaning protocols so that there is a plan in place if there are, people do need to be quarantined, and if they have moved throughout the site, have they touched some of the more high frequency areas, such as, the lobbies, the door handles, the elevators. You really just want to have a plan in place so that we are, making sure we spend more time in those areas, so that we are disinfecting and making sure that our residents are safe during this pandemic. Next slide, please. One of the big things with that, we've seen it on the news, is really proper training on the chemistries and the different PPEs and tools that we are using on site. This doesn't really necessarily pertain only to the janitorial staff. We want to make sure everyone that is coming into the building, whether it be the leasing department, the security, associates, the concierge staff, if you do have that on site, we want to make sure everyone's kind of up on the latest CDC recommendations for the proper masks, the proper, if they're wearing gloves. You really want to make sure that we're staying up on a daily basis on kind of what the CDC is recommending, for the specific site, and how we move forward on a daily basis to make sure that we are properly protecting our staff when they are on site, and kind of just making sure that everyone has the proper knowledge to move forward in this, this crisis that we're facing right now. One of the things that, we always thought we always considered our staff essential, but moving forward, obviously the janitorial teams are essential to maintaining your building and basically playing a very important role in kind of moving through the steps as we open more of the amenity spaces, the pool areas. So we really just want to make sure that, give them a little appreciation, kind of give them acknowledgement. They are risking their lives as well, going to work every day. So you just kind of want to make sure that you give them an acknowledgement. It goes a long way with the staff. Some of the other things to consider for adjustments on site is consider the killing time for disinfectants. Every disinfectant on the different chemicals and that we are using on site have different killing times. So whether it be 5 to 10 minutes, if you're spraying some of the solutions, say in the elevators, you want to make sure you're taking the necessary steps to make sure you give those solutions enough time to really neutralize the chemicals, so that you are properly making sure that those areas are maintained properly. One of the other things you kind of want to increase the inventory of mops, microfibers, solutions on site. We want to make sure that we're staying ahead of the supplies and the amount of stuff that we are keeping on hand, so that the teams can properly make sure that they are ensuring the safety of the residents on the property and on site. You want to make sure that we have everything in place to properly sanitize, properly disinfect, and properly make sure that your lives are a little easier, knowing that all the spaces in your community are being taken care of on a high frequency rate and on a daily basis, to make sure that we're helping out where we can. Another thing to think about, if you do this in-house or out-house, if your associates, do you have a plan in place? If your associates call out, people are getting sick, some people are afraid to come to work right now with just with everything they keep seeing on the news. So with planned companies, we do have floating crews in the markets where they can step in to help out, and they are familiar with some of the sites, and then just to make sure that you have the extra coverage in case of your staff calling out. You want to make sure that you're taking those steps. If you do it in-house and your associates call out because they are sick, what plans do you have? A plan B and a plan C to make sure that they are covered and the building's covered to ensure the safety of your residents. And one of the last points I wanted to touch on here with some of the adjustments, I know a lot of people are seeing it through, if you're going to the grocery stores, kind of the signage is going to be an important play at the communities, and making sure that you're kind of guiding the residents and kind of showing them taking the necessary steps on site to make sure that you're really making sure that the residents and making sure everyone's safe moving forward. As stuff does become open, with the pools are in some of the markets are starting to open back up. They're starting to put plans in place for the amenity spaces to open up. You really just want to make sure that you have the proper signage in place, and kind of just remind people about the social distance guidelines recommended through the CDC, so that we can kind of all work through this together, and the steps that we're taking really to ensure the safety of the residents and the community members as stuff starts to come back to some sort of normalcy in the next couple of weeks and in the next couple of months as well. Next slide, please. So I'm going to flip this back over to Dino, and he's kind of going to go over the security and the necessary steps we're taking during the COVID-19 landscape.
Thank you, Michael, and fantastic job going through the details of the necessary steps on the janitorial side during COVID-19. I just want to point out for the participants that we do have Juan Jose Chavez, one of our experts, for your questions. So before I get into the security piece of this presentation, remember the Q&A button below. If you have questions regarding janitorial, please feel free to click on that button and go ahead and ask. Once again, Michael, great job. Thank you today. So just wanted to dive into the security, and I would even say your front desks, your janitorial, your front desk staff, all the staff that Mike pointed out earlier, the importance of keeping them safe. It's having staff that's familiar with the building, having people in all parts of your building that you're used to having there that are highly trained for your property is the goal. Fortunately, for a company like Plan, should something happen, we have staff that can come in and fill in. But our goal is to keep people safe. We want healthy people all the time. So putting barriers between the staff and making sure they have the proper PPE, which is what we've been able to do. During troubling times, not only do we have to worry about keeping your building clean. I mean, there's a lot of focus on disinfectants and keeping your building clean, but when people are losing jobs, this is a difficult time when you turn on the news. When you see those unemployment rates that Mike talked about earlier, specifically in Boston, but in all of our markets, things get uneasy. Crime tends to go on the rise. So it is important that you maintain proper security while having the proper janitorial programs in place. This could mean locking down doors that may not have been locked down before, securing areas that may not have been secured in the past, making sure that we're controlling egress and ingress into the buildings. And Mike mentioned earlier, you may have certain areas, certain amenity spaces that have been locked down as a result of COVID-19. Making sure those areas remain secured, locked down with the proper protocols and communication that he mentioned earlier. Some ideas that we've seen out there, and you can see from some of the illustrations on the screen here, how to perhaps keep your front desk staff safe by putting up some of these barriers. And some of them I've seen on Amazon, and some of these ideas that we're focusing on here. One is the screen that you see in front of drummers sometimes when you go to an event. It puts that barrier, nice plastic barrier for your front desk staff. Another one is, and you're seeing it a lot on desks, and you see stuff like that in grocery stores. You want to just make sure that there is a 6-foot separation, and you want to have a barrier between the residents and your front desk staff as often as you're able to do that. And these are just some great ideas that we found that could help. Encourage people not to linger in the lobby. This is a challenge. People are in their units, they're bored, they're looking for someone to talk to. We can all appreciate that. They tend to come down and want to linger and hang out with the staff. Now's the time to communicate with your residents and encourage them to not to do that for the safety of the residents and the staff. So it's imperative that you communicate. Mike mentioned earlier the importance of communication, perhaps through flyers or through signage. Let them know that now's not the time that you want to be communicating with the staff and hanging out in the lobby. Lockdown doors, we talked about, during this time, controlling who's in the building is important, not only for security, but for the safety of the residents. So we want to make sure that if there's contractors that are coming into the building, that they've been vetted, that they have the proper PPE. We want to make sure if emergency personnel are coming into the building, that they've been accounted for. That we then go back into some of the things Mike mentioned earlier. We want to go back and disinfect these areas after people have come to the building. So we need to definitely control, vet, and make sure that when these people have come and left the building, that we're taking proper protocols to follow the steps that they may have taken to make sure that we go ahead and disinfect those areas. Locking down supplies, I think, is vital during this time. Before, we never thought so much that toilet paper would be a commodity, but it is now. We never thought how critical it was going to be to secure these things. But as these things become more and more difficult to find in stores, it's going to be imperative that these things are locked down and secure for your building. So you want to make sure that you have all the tools you need to be able to have those supplies on hand, and that you're securing that area. Vinny, if you could, for me, just full size the slide. My screen, for some reason, I can't see our next bullet point here.
I'm full screen. It's securing amenities.
Okay, thank you very much. So as I mentioned earlier, securing your amenities is critical during this time. You need to make sure that we found out as the weather got nicer, just to give you an example, some of the properties in some of the other markets that we're servicing, residents were actually going and opening up barbecue pits and areas of the buildings that we had secured because the weather was nice. They figured they're outside. So you need to make sure that if you have electronics, cameras, whatever you may have to have eyes on these areas, or perhaps additional patrols, you want to make sure that those are secure. After they've been secure, they remain secure, and that someone didn't go back and reopen those amenity spaces. So securing your amenities is crucial. One of the other things I just want to talk about that's not on my list here today is packages. I get asked a lot about how to handle packages during COVID-19. I think at this time it's not a bad idea, and we've done it for some of our properties in our communities, to deliver packages to the residents. This may be a good time to perhaps add a package person, a package porter, or perhaps using an additional security person to deliver the packages up to a resident rather than have them come down to the lobby. In some cases, this could mean they have to get in an elevator, they have to hit a button to come downstairs, you're putting them in front of your front desk staff. All of that could and should perhaps be avoided by having an extra staff member deliver packages upstairs. Some of the other things I've heard around packages, and Mike touched on, we don't know, there's no definitive answer to how long COVID can live, boxes or spaces. Some of the other properties that we're working with are taking some of these open amenity spaces or closed amenity spaces, but opening them for packages. So we could secure packages in a room, let's say for 3 days, allow any of the virus to get killed on those packages over that time frame, and then deliver, and circulating the package deliveries on different days based on the different rooms that they're kept in. And of course, once we deliver packages for those rooms, we disinfect the room, and then we can load more packages for another day of delivery. These are just some of the ideas that we have regarding packages, some of the things that we've seen out there, and hopefully you can benefit from some of that. With that said, that concludes my portion. I just want to remind everyone that we do have a Q&A section for you to ask not only myself, but we have Juan Jose Chavez joining us, who is a expert in the janitorial field for any of your specific janitorial questions. Next slide, Vin. I'm going to turn it back over to Mike for a quick moment before we dive into our Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Dino. Yeah, so we kind of, this page here that we have up are some of the, just some of the things that our clients are saying about us in the market. I mean, it's great to get some of the feedback during, these unprecedented times that our associates are really going up, over the top to provide, the additional services, and to make sure that, we're really taking the extra level to make sure that the communities that we service are, safe, and make sure that we're really helping out and going the extra mile for our clients. So I just kind of wanted to leave this up for a second. It's just a couple of the testimonials that our clients are saying about us in the Boston market. And, it's great. It's great feedback for the team to see that, our hard work is, it's kind of paying off for ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And now I think, Vinny, if we could advance the slide, we will begin our Q&A. And while we do that, we're going to leave some of our resources up for you. If you're taking notes, we'll leave this screen on for the duration of our town hall today so that you can go ahead and copy down some of the notes and some of the resources that we have for you. So without any further ado, I'm excited that we have some questions here, and one of them is from one of our participants today. And JJ, this one looks like it's going to go to you, my friend. And the question is, do we know if fitness centers or furniture in lobbies need to be 6 feet apart?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dino. That's a great question. So the answer is, if possible, that's a great thing to do. However, I think that we need to understand really this applies, every building is different from each other. So if you have the space in your fitness center that you will be able to reconfigure the setup of the equipment and trying to keep at least 6 feet from each piece of equipment, that will be great. Go ahead and do it. The answer for that will be yes. The same thing will apply to any amenity area, lobbies, meeting rooms, clubhouses, club rooms, all that. For example, something that we are noticing in our partners on the commercial vertical is that they are resetting, reconfiguring all their office spaces and everything to trying to keep that away. So the answer is, if possible, yes. If you're able to do it, absolutely. If not, then just we'll have to think about protocols in terms of use. If it's a fitness center that you're not able to do that, perhaps have the fitness center to be used by reservation and allowing, X amount of residents based on the square footage of the room by X amount of minutes, or an hour or 90 minutes, and then go from there. But that's a great question. And I think that the industry overall, commercial industry, multifamily industry, is going through this rethinking of configurations for lobby spaces and amenity areas to try to keep the distance of at least 6 feet from each other.
Thank you very much, JJ, and great answer. I think that 6 feet apart pertains to almost everything that we're doing now. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I watch people driving 6 feet apart now in their cars and keeping extra distance. But everything is distance now between people. And that's a good segue into a question that's out here for myself. How might security be different as the economy reopens? And, if you're watching and following on the news, I think there's different phases in different markets. People are reopening amenities at different times. I think security is going to be different in the way that there is going to be more distance between your security personnel or your front desk personnel going forward. I think that's here to stay. I think how we communicate, I think with residents and with each other about the distance, PPE, I think is here to stay for a lot of security. I think more commonly will be the gloves. I think the masks for certain areas will remain. I think people will have more distant, and I think how we handle egress and ingress, I think we'll be able to, from a security perspective, ask more questions of people that are coming in the building. I know in some of our other town halls, we work with attorneys, and they're opening up, considerations for buildings and what is legal to be able to ask folks as they're coming in or doing work in your building, or perhaps other vendors or contractors coming into your building. So I think security, just like probably a lot of other people who work in the building, other janitors, maintenance, I think a lot of it is going to change for the good. And I think this virtual thing that we're doing today is here to stay as well. So I hope I answered your question on how security may change going forward. And let's see here. We have another one for JJ. Is electrostatic cleaning necessary to make my common areas completely safe? That's an interesting question.
Thank you, Dino. Okay, so is it necessary? It could be necessary. I will say it's not completely necessary, just because there are other techniques that you could use to disinfect a common area, right? Now, I think that the interesting part here is completely safe. So it is definitely effective, but completely safe, I don't know if I will use that terminology, just because you can disinfect an area and 2 minutes after that, somebody can come in and touch that surface, and then that surface is no longer completely safe, right? So the electrostatic, spraying or cleaning, it came out about 3 years ago. It's very interesting how this industry works, and now it's all over the news. It's all over front and center in how providers are trying to be ahead of the trends, right? And how we are adding value. So, for example, in our organization, we are utilizing that technology. It has definitely been very effective, but it's not just let's electrostatic spray the area and then let's walk out and forget about it. It has to be just one part of a very integral program and protocols that janitorial companies should be using to treat areas. So it's definitely it's effective. It's very, very effective. There is a financial commitment on it. The equipment is it could be very pricey. So if your association, if your organization is on a budget, that might be a challenge. Right now, it's becoming very popular. So even trying to secure that type of equipment could be difficult, but it's great. And the way that it's effective is basically you're using a disinfecting solution that is being thrown in the air, but as it's coming out of the sprayer, there's an electrode there that is positively charging that substance. So when it lands on any surface, it's able to wrap basically the surface into this disinfectant solution. So it's very, very effective because it's not only cleaning just where, for example, in an office chair, it's not only cleaning just the seat and the back and the arms, where you rest your arms, but it's also in the back, in the lower parts and all that, just because it has been charged and it attracts into that surface. So that's why it has been very effective, rather than if you spray disinfectant on a, let's say, microfiber cloth, you're only going to be able to cover the surface where you are actually wiping. So you technically will have to wipe the entire surface, front, back, sides, in order to be as effective at electrostatic spraying. Also, obviously, because of the spraying action, you're able to cover a bigger surface than if you are doing just the spray and wipe. So, that will be for that,
Appreciate that, JJ, and great information there. I've seen those machines out there. I know how hard they are to get. I know Plan has been fortunate to get our hands on some of these machines, and we're out there trying to help as much as we can to our client base and folks who need this done. So we have just a couple more questions. So I'm going to grab one, and then JJ, if you'll stick around, we got one more for you. So for me, how should security be handled for a vacated building? So I think what people may want to consider during this is when a building has been vacated, in a lot of cases, we've left these buildings more vulnerable to break-ins. Breaking and entering is a big thing happening during COVID-19, whether it's to vehicles, whether it's to areas that have been abandoned or left behind. Just securing your building and walking away and saying, okay, we'll come back when it's time to open, may not be a good idea when it comes to security. Whether you do routine drive-by checks to make sure that the building is still secure. And some properties have even considered keeping a security presence inside a building when it's secure. To me, I think that's the best way to manage security when a building has been vacated, is to make sure that there is still a presence. This will allow that security officer to also make sure that no flooding is happening, make sure no electrical fires have started. This will allow, ensure that while you're away from your property, that it's still being maintained. And having those patrols can be considered a lifesaver if you have someone who gets eyes on them early, and then to find out 3 months after you reopened your building that there was a flood, and now you have to do all these repairs. So I strongly recommend that even during when your building may be vacated, that you consider having a security presence or at least doing drive-by checks. So I hope that answered that question, and we are down to our final question for you, JJ, as I mentioned. And this is, do we have to prepare anything? Do we have to prepare anything for electrostatic cleaning? That's interesting.
Thank you, Dino. Yes, so it is recommended that you definitely first either try to wipe or clean as much as you can, the surface. So if it's a lobby, you want to dust and such. Also, you want to remove any paper products around. You don't want to have a lot of papers running, staying on top of the surface or something like that. The electrostatic spraying leaves a small dust that, it needs to stay on the surface, and it will stay on the surface. So yes, there is a preparation in terms of the area that needs to happen. Also, something that, for example, we are doing is that there's a communication that goes out to the residents in the building, or if you need to close an area or put barriers or put a little signage that says areas being currently treated by the janitorial team, you want to try to keep as many people outside, or from the inside of the area. So you don't want people to start coming into the lobby or the meeting room or the fitness center or something. So you want to make sure that your access points are closed, are locked, there's a sign on it. That allows the professional doing the spraying a free area to operate. And, that way they won't have any interruptions, and the process will be effective.
Thank you very much, JJ. I want to thank, that concludes our Q&A and our presentation today. I want to thank Mike Miller for doing a fantastic job presenting today. I want to thank Juan Jose Chavez for being on hand with his expertise on janitorial today. I'm going to ask you both, gentlemen, to go ahead and fade away and say your goodbyes. We are going to keep the screen open for anyone who needs to take any more notes today. This will be part of an ongoing series. So Mike will continue to do a Boston local presentation on a regular basis, perhaps every couple of weeks or so, or as needed. So if you have other people that that can benefit from this presentation, please bring them along. Invite them to join us for our next Boston Town Hall. Until then, stay safe. Thank you for joining us today, and we will talk to you again soon. Thank you.